Hey guys, it's Hollywood Studios here. I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, as today is Christmas Day. In today's video, I'm going to be counting down my personal top 50 favorite roller coasters from number 50 all the way up to number 1. Before I get into the video, of course, these are all just my opinions. They are not all facts. And I want to list off the 10 honorable mentions that couldn't quite crack the top 50, but still should be mentioned. Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood, Candemonium at Hershey Park, Legend at Holiday World, Steel Force at Dorney Park, Texas Stingray at SeaWorld San Antonio, Medusa at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, Kumba at Busch Gardens Tampa, Full Throttle at Six Flags Magic Mountain, Storm Runner at Hershey Park, and Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando. With that being said, let's kick off the top 50 with number 50, Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Universal's Islands of Adventure. This is by far one of the best themed coasters ever built. The theming and attention to detail that went into this attraction still blows my mind to this day. It has a great story. It is so much fun. It may not be the most intense ride ever, but it has so many different elements, all of which add up to a really awesome, complete experience. Number 49 is Voyage at Holiday World. Now I know I'm going to get a ton of hate for this placement, but personally I don't really think Voyage is all that. I thought it was fairly rough when I rode it, and it was not very strong in the force department. The airtime really wasn't there. Laterals weren't really present very much either, so for me personally, I think it's a pretty overrated ride. I do hope to get back on it at some point and hopefully have some better rides on it, but unfortunately, not really one of my favorite wooden coasters. Number 48 is Phoenix at Knoebels, another ride some people may think I have too low. I think for what it does, it's a really good ride. It has some very surprising airtime moments that you wouldn't expect from a ride so old, but at the same time, a lot of the layout to me is kind of just filler, although it is one of the smoothest wooden coasters out there, so it definitely gets some bonus points for that. Number 47 is Intimidator at Carowinds. This is another really good ride. This is a B&M Hyper, one of the stagger train designs where the train is much longer than the other B&M Hypers, and I know a lot of people call it Intimidator for the trim brakes, but on my more recent rides, the trim brakes really didn't do too much to affect the ride, so I thought it was a great experience. At number 46 and number 45, we have Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast and Mr. Freeze at Six Flags St. Louis and Six Flags Over Texas. To me, they're not really too different, so I just rank them together. Both of these rides are so much fun, some of the most intense coasters out there, and they have such a variety of forces. You have hang time slash air time on the inverted top hat. You have the overbank turn, which the first go around is super graceful, and the second go around tries to rip your face off. And of course you have that massive spike where you get launched vertically, one of the most fun, unique coasters out there. At number 44, we have Millennium Force at Cedar Point. This is a ride I used to rank very highly. It used to be one of my favorite coasters, but as time has gone on, I've come to not really be a huge fan of Millennium Force. I think for what it is, it should be a lot better. It doesn't really have the greatest forces. The layout's pretty dull and doesn't do anything inspiring. For me, it's just a bunch of overbank turns and very weak airtime hills, which I'd rather see a layout that has a little more variety to it. At number 43, we have Galeforce at Playland's Castaway Cove. This is one of the most intense coasters out there. It is ridiculous how tight the layout is as well. The way they crammed it into that little boardwalk park is mind-blowing. Has some really strong airtime, great laterals, strong positives. Overall, a really intense ride. At number 42, we have Copperhead Strike at Carowinds. This is one of my favorite launch coasters. Has such a great variety of forces, from its hang time to the air time to the positive G's. Really good theming as well, with a great area around it. Overall, just a really fun ride. At number 41, we have New Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas. This is definitely the weakest RMC, and there's no question about that. I always can't help but wonder how much better the ride would be if it was built a couple years later. But of course, there had to be one coaster that would be RMC's first, and this one just happened to be that. It's not like it's a bad ride, it still has some really good airtime moments, but overall the layout really is not all that compared to the newer RMCs that have been built since then. At number 40, we have Orion at Kings Island. It's another B&M Giga coaster that I think could have been a lot better, but for what it is a really fun ride. That wave turn is really fun, sends you floating up out of your seat. There's some really good airtime moments, and the final two elements are honestly my favorite part of the ride. I do wish it had more track length, as everyone says, but for what it is, it's a really good ride and definitely one of the better coasters at Kings Island. Number 39, we have Joker at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. This is an RMC that a lot of people tend to either really like or really dislike, and I'd probably put myself somewhere in the middle. I think it definitely lacks a lot of the power that some of the other RMC coasters have, so the airtime moments don't really hit as hard, but it still has an excellent first drop, and it really focuses more on the inversions, and those inversions are done so well, especially the step up, underflip, and stall. Really great elements. At number 38 is Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. This is a really good B&M hypercoaster, another one that gets so much hate, but given that I ride it so much, I get to see it on its good and bad days, and on its good days, it is really good. It can give some really strong airtime, just sends you flying out of your seat. The helix is so much fun, and sometimes you really don't hit those trims too hard, so those last few bunny hills really send you flying. Number 37, another B&M hypercoaster, Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. This is one of the newer B&M hypercoasters, and everyone always raves about how great this one is. And when I first rode it, I thought it was really overrated, but then the second time I got to ride it a year later, I thought it was much better. The first half really is what makes this ride. There's so many strong airtime moments that just send you flying out of your seat. The second half is definitely a weak point for this ride. It doesn't really do too much, but that first half more than makes up for it. Number 36, we have Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. Another smaller scale RMC. This is probably the shortest RMC other than the Raptors that I can think of, but it does pack a punch. That first drop is really good, has some fun inversions, that wave turn is great. It runs a little on the slow side from my experiences, so it again lacks a lot of the power that some of the other RMCs have, but its layout is really good. I just wish it was a little bit longer, but it's a great ride for what it is. At number 35, we have Gold Striker at California's Great America, a really great GCI coaster. It has such a fast-paced layout. I love its setting right up against the front entrance where you get to see it as you're walking in. It's a really great setup for a ride, and overall just a really powerful GCI. At number 34, another GCI, Thunderhead at Dollywood. It was really tough to pick between this and Gold Striker, but I had to give the edge to Thunderhead because I think its layout is just a little bit better, has some really strong airtime moments, really just throws you out of your seat, and its setting is great. Night rides on this ride too are just so much fun, and overall it's one of the best coasters at Dollywood. Next up at number 33 is Jersey Devil at Six Flags Great Adventure. This is a ride that I've had so many different experiences on. I've ridden it countless number of times, and it is always a great ride. Of course, it gets a lot of flack for not being as intense as the original Raptors, and that is definitely true. It is not the original Raptors, but I do think for what it is, it's a fun ride. You have some really great elements. The whole first half, in my opinion, is really good. The second half definitely is not quite as good, but for what it is, it provides a great ride experience, and the same can be said about number 32, which is Wonder Woman Flight of Courage at Magic Mountain. Basically the exact same ride as Jersey Devil, except it runs ever so slightly faster, a little bit smoother, and has a bit of a modified ending, which does put it over the top for me personally. The whole second half of Wonder Woman does run faster than Jersey Devil for whatever reason, which is why I see it as better, but both rides are pretty much the exact same. At number 31, we have Diamondback at Kings Island, one of the best B&M coasters out there. It just throws you out of your seat on every hill. The staggered seating really works to this ride's advantage with the way the hills are profiled, and that ending is a bit of a hit or miss depending on how the trim brakes go on the mid-course, but sometimes you'll get some really great airtime on those final hills, and of course the splashdown is one of my favorite parts of the ride, mainly because when you're in the very back row and you stick your hand out to the side, you will get wet, which is very great on a hot Ohio day because it gets very hot at that park. At number 30, we have Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom. This is one of the only coasters of its kind ever built. The only other one is currently under construction, but this is a really awesome ride. It packs in so much to a tiny layout, so much great ejector airtime, some really nice quick transitions. Not the longest ride out there, but for what it is, it provides a really fast-paced, fun ride experience. At number 29, we have King Dukat, Six Flags Great Adventure, the world's tallest roller coaster as of now. This ride always packs in such an adrenaline rush. 0 to 128 miles an hour, you really feel it. And my favorite thing is always to just go on this ride and go over and over again, trying to get a rollback, which I never have for whatever reason, but such a fun ride. I think it gets way too much hate. It is one of the best coasters out there, and the same can be said about number 28, which was Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. Of course, now Top Thrill Dragster is no longer with us. It's undergoing a transformation. I consider the two experiences separate because I don't think Top Thrill 2 will measure up to the way Top Thrill Dragster was. It is basically King Dukat, smoother with lap bars. So take your pick on what's better. Personally, I think Dragster just ever so slightly beats Ka because of its experience in the front and back row. Front row, I will take King Ka, but back row, Dragster has it because it's so much smoother and you get more airtime. Moving on to number 27 is Superman the Ride at Six Flags New England. This is a ride that would be so much higher if it just had different trains. Unfortunately, the restraints they have on it now really do hamper the ride experience, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the layout is one of the best layouts ever built. Even though it's over 20 years old at this point, it still packs a punch. That fourth hill really throws you out of your seat. The whole twister section is great, and overall it's a really awesome ride. At number 26, we have Magnum XL200 at Cedar Point. This is a ride that I used to absolutely despise, but then I got some better rides on it, and it is now one of my favorite coasters at Cedar Point. The way it throws you out of your seat on those weird triangular shaped hills is just such a great experience, and it's not even that rough of a ride considering its age and the fact that it's manufactured by Aero. The best is to get a trimless ride on this, which we got during Coaster Mania 2021. You absolutely fly through the ending of the ride. It's such a great experience, especially at night. Moving on to number 25, we have Tatsu at Six Flags Magic Mountain, by far the best flying coaster I've ever been on. I'm not a huge fan of the other flying coasters I've been on, but this one is very different. It has such a giant size to it. It really dominates the entire center of the park. And that pretzel loop, it feels like the whole ride is building up to that moment when you dive down. One of the most intense maneuvers ever built on a roller coaster. Absolutely an amazing attraction. Number 24, we have Railblazer at California's Great America. This is another really intense ride, but for a completely different reason. It's a super short attraction, but it really packs a punch, throwing you out of your seat in every way possible on every maneuver. It is such a great ride, and the same can be said about its sister coaster, number 23, Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster at Fiesta, Texas. Only reason I have Wonder Woman over it is because I found it to run just a little bit faster than Railblazer, but otherwise everything I said about Railblazer applies to Wonder Woman. Moving on to number 22, we have Mystic Timbers at Kings Island, in my opinion the best coaster at the park. This is definitely the best GCI I've ridden as well. It has one of the best layouts for a wooden coaster out there. It's not the longest ride out there, but it really packs in so many airtime moments of varying degrees of quality, which I like because it spices up the layout a little bit, and the theme that goes along with it is also really great. Overall, just a great experience. At number 21, we have another wooden coaster, Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City. This delivers my personal favorite night ride. The way you're out in the woods, you can't see anything because the time I rode it, there were no lights back there. And overall, the layout is really good. Lots of great airtime moments, and of course, that double barrel roll finale is awesome. Moving on to number 20, we have another RMC coaster, Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. This ride definitely tends to be a little temperamental, but on all the rides I've had on it, it absolutely flies through the layout, especially that final lap. You're just constantly getting popped up out of your seat in varying different ways. It's so much fun and is definitely the best coaster at Six Flags New England. Moving on to number 19, we have Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom, another great RMC coaster. This one has that barrel roll down drop and a ton of really powerful ejector airtime moments. Again, not really the longest ride out there, but it really does pack a punch for what it offers. Number 18, we have Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. This is one of the most unique coasters I've ever ridden. It's a spinning coaster, but not like your typical spinning coasters. It sends you flying out of your seat with every maneuver. That drop out of the station is awesome. I love the fact that it has so many different launches, so many different elements, and the spinning really adds to what otherwise would be a fairly typical layout. Moving on to number 17, we have Iron Rattler at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, another excellent RMC coaster. The thing that really makes this ride are its two grand drops. The first drop, which is one of the best first drops on any coaster, the way it twists back and forth as you go down that 80-degree plunge is absolutely insane. And then of course you have the quarry drop, which is ridiculous. You come into it with so much speed and just get sent flying as you fly down that hill and go into the tunnel. It's such a great ride, and that is why I have it placed at number 17. Moving on to number 16, we have Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. This is by far the best B&M hypercoaster I've ever ridden. It has no mid-course brake run, so it just keeps going and going until you hit those final brakes. This is one of the only B&M coasters that actually features some real strong ejector airtime, not just floater airtime. It's definitely a little rough in the valleys, but I can look past that because it delivers some of the best airtime you can get on a coaster like this. Moving on to number 15 is a ride that has changed a lot ever since I first rode it, Lightning Rod at Dollywood. When I first rode this ride, it was absolutely my number one, and I think if it stayed in that form, it probably still would be my number one, if not close to it. But my rides in 2022 definitely did knock it down a little bit. Not like it's a really bad ride or anything, it's still an excellent coaster, but it definitely is toned down from what it used to be. The launch doesn't launch you quite as high as it used to, quite as fast, so that airtime moment you used to get at the top is no longer there, and of course now they're putting a lift hill on it, so I have a feeling this ride's just going to keep dropping for me, unfortunately. But I do think that the addition of the IBAX track definitely made it a lot smoother and more easy to enjoy. If they could just do that for the rest of the layout, I think this ride would improve. But for what it is, it has a great layout and just keeps getting more and more intense until you hit the finale with the quad down and that turn. Such an extreme coaster with one of the best settings out there. Moving on to number 14 is Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. This ride delivers one of the best night rides out there. You absolutely fly through all the timber, you have no idea which way you're going, and that final helix really sends you flying all over the place, pinned against the side of your seat. One of the best coaster experiences out there, definitely a ride you need to check out at night. Moving on to number 13 is Sky Rush at Hershey Park, one of the most intense coasters out there. I know this has one of the worst restraint systems out there, but personally it doesn't bother me too much. That drop is one of the best drops ever made. I do think this ride would be a lot higher if the layout was designed a little better. I just feel that other than the airtime moments and the Stangle dive, a lot of it is just filler track that really doesn't do too much, but otherwise this is a really great ride, and I can't wait to get some more rides on it. Moving on to number 12, we have Maverick at Cedar Point. This coaster is very similar to a coaster that's 10 spots up, which you'll see soon, except it's a smaller version and was built earlier. It really is a master of all different elements. It features laterals, airtime, positive Gs, inversions, so many different elements of a coaster all combined into one masterpiece of a package. It has great theming, great elements, and overall has always been one of my favorite coasters out there. Moving on to number 11, we have Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I did not get a dueling ride on this coaster, but even without that, this is one of the best RMCs out there. Both sides offer unique elements that are different from each other but still complement each other, and really feature some strong ejector airtime where you wouldn't really expect to feel strong ejector airtime. It is an absolute machine when it comes to airtime, which is the thing that California as a whole doesn't have too much of, but Twisted Colossus definitely makes up for that. Moving on to number 10 is one of the most unique coasters out there, X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Very tough to decide between this and Twisted Colossus, but I did decide to give X2 the edge because of its uniqueness. Personally, I prefer this ride on the outside seat instead of the inside seat. I think the outside seat is more chaotic and more intense, which I find a little more enjoyable than the smoother, kind of tamer experience you get on the inside seat. The drop on this coaster is absolutely demented the way you face straight down. I do wish it had better operations because it definitely makes it very difficult to get a good amount of rides on this. But the ride itself is so unique, you can't find anything else like it in the country, which is why it is one of the best coasters I've ridden. Moving on to number 9, we have Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion, one of the most powerful RMC coasters out there. So many great airtime moments back to back to back, and it absolutely flies through the layout, never letting up until you hit that final brake run. Moving on to number 8, we have Pantheon at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. This is a ride that originally I thought was really good, but didn't really crack the upper echelon of coasters until I rode it again this year at night, and man, this ride is excellent. That swing launch section is so much fun. The second half of the ride really delivers some great elements of airtime, hang time, all those different forces that you want to see in a coaster, this ride has. Moving on to number 7, we have Fury 325 at Carowinds, one of the best coasters out there, consistently a crowd pleaser of a coaster that everyone enjoys, has such a great layout that combines airtime, speed, laterals. It really is a beautiful coaster as well, the way it floats over the entrance, goes between two different states, really is one of the most perfect designed coasters out there. At number 6, we have Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion, my personal favorite Giga coaster. This ride just does so many different things that other Giga coasters do not, that makes it above all the other ones for me personally. Those snap turns really do send you flying side to side, up and down, and it's such a fast-paced ride. It never lets up until the very end. One of the only coasters that can consistently make me almost black out on every ride. Moving on to number 5 is the coaster I have definitely ridden more than any other, El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. It's had its good moments, it's had its bad moments, but overall it delivers some of the best airtime out there. Probably my favorite airtime moments on any coaster, those two camelbacks. The way they just keep you flying out of your seat with such a strong force is just mind-blowing still to this day. It does have some filler track, I won't lie. The section in between the turnaround and the rolling thunder hill doesn't really do too much, but I do think overall the coaster as a whole is a really great ride that has such a great sequence of elements. Moving on to number 4 is a new for 2023 coaster, Wildcat's Revenge at Hershey Park. I really wasn't expecting this ride to be as good as it was. I thought it would be probably a middle tier RMC, maybe upper tier, but it is strong upper tier, almost the best that they have ever made. It really does feel like the Iron Gwazi of the North. It has so many great elements, so fast paced, and really throws in some elements and forces you wouldn't expect to feel on an RMC like this. Moving on to number 3, we have Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. One of the most consistently ranked highest coasters in the world. Steel Vengeance really does pack a punch. It is one of the longest coasters out there considering its extremity. It has so many great airtime moments. It does start to feel a little repetitive after a while, and the boarding process is an absolute nightmare, which is what definitely holds it back from being higher. But for what it is an absolutely amazing ride. Definitely it was designed to be the best coaster out there, and it just about accomplishes that. At number 2, we have Velocicoaster at Universal's Islands of Adventure. This is one of the most perfect coasters out there. This is the one I said very similar to Maverick, just a little more refined, more modern, has better theming, better elements. That first half, those 2 inversions really send you flying out of your seat, and then once you get to the second half, it is all S-tier elements from there until the very end of the ride. The Mosasaurus roll, definitely my favorite inversion out there. So many excellent moments on this ride, but it can't quite beat number 1, which is Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa. I was able to ride this ride 34 times within 24 hours, and all of those rides added up to one of the best coasters out there. I don't know if anything will top this anytime soon. The way it throws you out of your seat in so many different ways and feels much better sequenced than a lot of the other RMCs, which kind of throw a bunch of smaller elements at you in quick succession. This one focuses on the grandness of its elements, which I prefer personally from a design standpoint. Overall, it has some of the best elements out there, and that is why it is my personal favorite roller coaster. So let me know what you guys thought of this list down in the comments. Again, I hope you all had a great Christmas if you celebrate. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye, guys.